All right, let's go ahead and move on. So this would be you, Maria. How do we maintain quality educators in our district? And we have some great educators.
Yes, yes. I thought this was a great question. Thank you, Mike, because teachers are really the backbone, right?
Mhm.
Teachers are really the backbone of our school. So I think when we look at teachers, there's two main areas, right? There's always going to be recruitment and retention,
Mhm.
right? How do we recruit the best and how do we retain um, the best? We've talked a little bit of our salaries, right? There's always room for improvement in our salaries,
Sure.
in our stipends, you know, for those teachers who go above and beyond and they're doing the extracurricular things or the coaching, right? So there's definitely room for increasement in salaries and stipends. And we're doing better with our recruitment, right? We're expanding how we're recruiting. We're going to, like I said, some of those HBCUs. It looks like from the statistics that I like, we like got about 78% of our teachers have 6+ years of experience, and 51% have 10 or more years. So we do have a nice pool of teachers with tenured experience. And the last time they looked at surveying the teachers, 86.92% felt very supported and that they had positive relationships with their campus administration.
I saw that
And
report.
yeah, so that was 86.9 or almost 87%.
That's
And then,
amazing. Just to put it, let everybody understand, like that's pretty drastic. It's not like we're
yes,
close. It's really over the line.
yes, yes. And then 85% felt proud of the school district they worked in, right?
Mhm.
So, like you said, Jeff, that's amazing. That's great. So again, if we talk about we want our good to be better and our better to be best, clearly, you know, we've got an 85% retention rate right now. So we'd like to see all those numbers in the 90s, right? If we want to be the school district of choice and the school of destination school, then we want all those in the 90s. We would love all our teachers to be, you know, 90s, saying that they feel appreciated and supported and a retention rate. But yes, we're doing really well, but there's always more that we can do. I
Sure.
think a lot of times the research shows that you don't necessarily leave your position, you leave a supervisor, you leave a corporate culture is oftentimes why people leave their jobs. So, you know, what can we do better, right? What do teachers need that we can do better for that campus culture? And I kind of jotted down a lot of those things. Teacher appreciation. How do we look at our promotions? Are there collegial relationships? Meaningful and fair evaluations. They've asked for in some of their surveys that they've asked for targeted support for the first year. They've asked for mentoring programs, and I know that HB3, the House Bill 3, has even earmarked some monies for mentoring programs. They want to feel included in decision making. They want more time for peer collaboration, teacher-friendly schedules when it comes to like lunch duties and planning periods. Do they have the needed resources? And I think an equity campus culture again would assist with that. And again, I'm not saying that when I list those needs that we're not doing those. I think anybody who's following my Facebook page saw that I just did a shout out to two principals, because when I was out walking, meeting some of the stakeholders, I mean, very spontaneously, I did not even ask. They mentioned two principals in particular that they said were just phenomenal to work for and had a great culture, and they were very appreciative of them and loved their jobs. So I think we have a lot that is going well, but clearly salaries, and stipends and some of the things that make for a great culture is what we need to kind of work on, because we do want to retain and we do want to recruit the very best, because
Sure.
we are and we want to be the very best.
Absolutely. Mike?
I'm probably not quite as positive as Maria is on some of this. Um, I feel like our teacher turnover rate is higher than I would like to see it. I mean, when you're losing 1 out of 5 teachers, to me that's higher than I would like it. We're out of 86 school districts in North Texas. We rank number 53 in terms of keeping our teachers. That's I don't I, that's concerning to me. I think there are probably a number of issues there, and certainly the things Maria has said. I think are positives. I do think by and large, many of the teachers love what's going on their campuses. But I do think there is an issue. I've had a number of people reaching out to me about what they've described as low teacher morale. And I think part of you're always going to have some teachers that leave, going to a better, greener pastures, especially young coaches, going to go coach somewhere else, a promotion. But this is higher, and it's increasing. If you look back last year, it's higher this year than last year. My hunch is it's again due to, I do think there's an issue on some of our campuses with morale. And I think there's an issue with pay. I think the poor morale, you can say, well, does COVID's certainly not helped it. I mean, I think COVID's made a difficult job extremely difficult for teachers. At the same time, I really don't think that's the only factor. I think that this is something that really needs to be explored and addressed by the administration. My hunch is I really do think that there needs to be a better connection between our superintendent and teachers. And he needs to be able to hear their concerns and see what those are. I think that's been one thing that's kind of been missing the last couple of years. Salary wise, I think we really need to do better. I talked before about when we were on the old, and I'll call it the old school board, 10 years ago or so, we were looking at basically what we have right now. We were looking at difficult retention, and we were looking at our salaries being poor, especially among our new teachers. And that's primarily the ones, you get a brand new teacher, they're out for less than 5 years, they get a couple of years experience from us, and then they're on to greener pastures. Well, that's a problem if your new young talent is leaving. Mm-hmm. You want to keep that new young talent here. We went out and with the community support, we raised teachers' salaries, and they were very competitive at the time. We were up there right with Mansfield, with Arlington, and it made a big difference. We had people calling us trying to be hired instead of looking at going somewhere else. Unfortunately, I think
stack of 1,000 is what I heard about applications. Yeah,
we have squandered that over the past number of years, and we have dropped down. I mean, if you look at the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex right now with this younger group of teachers, we're number 34 in that group where our salary is, and that's out of 48. So I mean, that's not very good. And so I think we've seen a cumulative, and this is if you add the older teachers' salaries in, a cumulative decline of about 68% since 2014-15. I think when we look at the principals, we kind of talked about this a minute ago. Our principal pay is not better than the teachers. We've got principals. I know of principals right now that are looking for other jobs. And again, we get into a pay. If you could get paid 15, 20 more thousand to go to a neighboring district, it's tough to turn that down. Our assistant principals, their pay is even more out of whack. Sure. The stipends, I just see that we've got some problems there that I think our board needs to step up to and address. As Maria said, as I've said on a number of occasions, our teachers and our educators, and it's not, it's our assistant principals, our counselors, our principals, they are the backbone of what we do. And if we lose them, that hurts.
Well, and I think if we take exactly what both of you guys said and mesh them together, that's exactly what's going on, because it's a common theme around the city, right? Fire department's running the same thing, the police department and city workers running the same thing. It's a great place to work. I love my boss, but Mansfield's paying $10,000 more. And in our case, like you said, the old guard finally raised those pays. That was when Faith was in elementary school. And we were top of the charts, and teachers were talking about Kennedale all over DFW, but overall nationally, everybody got raises. Everybody was making more income. So we were late for the race when the race was starting over at the same time. And that's what kind of happened to us. Now we're behind very quickly. So like again, I think if both you guys' assessments of it, we put them together, exactly what's going on is it's great and we love it. And I'm not saying that there's issues exactly. There's always going to be issues in big corporations, but overall everybody's generally happy. But Fort Worth's paying better, or I can go to California or whatever. So
Right. We've got to increase that. Like I said, Mike and I definitely agree on that. Increase salaries, the stipends, and that's why some of those mentoring programs for some of those new teachers in the first 2 years to again make sure that what are their needs so that they do stay with the district, because we do want to position ourselves that we are a district of choice, right? So we definitely have to take care of the backbone. I totally agree. That's how I started it out. They're the backbone. We've got to look at that and do something about that.
But one of the issues that you'll hear, I mean, I've heard this for 20 years being associated with the schools, is funding. Well, we don't know what our funding is.
sure.
Well, we never know what our funding is every 2 years. The way Texas is set up, you don't know what it is every 2 years until the legislature finishes in June. But there are times you have to kind of make some decisions and not play the most conservative hand that you're dealt. And I think teachers' salaries to me are kind of one of those times. If there are other things we can kind of scrimp on if we need to do that, but our cost of our educators, that's something that we need to be on. I mean, we need to be at the forefront there.
Right. I would agree with that. And I think going off of what Mike said too, we do need to, if there's a morale issue or kind of whatever word we want to use there, that is so important why we always make sure that we're going to need to survey the teachers, because we need to hear it from them. What do they need? What are the supports that they need? What are the resources that we need? How do we improve the working conditions? What is it that they really value most in their job, and make sure that we're meeting that for them, because we do want to recruit them and retain them. So we got to do those mentorship programs. We got to increase salaries, stipends, and we got to survey them and hear their voices of what do we need to do better for you specifically.
Yeah, and all young people just coming out of college and they starting their career, they're gonna want a few things. They want money, but they know they're not gonna get it because they don't have experience. But they want, at least if they start somewhere, that there's a chance of upward mobility.
Right.
The problem with smaller districts is if it's a great district and we're paying our teachers well and they're happy, they love their bosses, they're not going to go anywhere, and they're going to hopefully retire. Like, Miss Clark, it's amazing. I know everybody knows who Miss Clark is. And she's been a teacher for a long time, and she's a great teacher. She actually comes up and watches Faith play volleyball all the time. Her and John do. And so we want those kind of teachers. So my second one will come up and hopefully get Miss Clark, my third one, and my fourth one. We want that legacy there. But it's hard for these young ones who are, piss and vinegar, I think is the term, and they're excited and they have the next generation, they have ideas, and we don't want to stifle that. We want those kinds of teachers and keep them here. But just like you guys would, and just like I would, we got to chase the Benjamins, and we want that bigger check. We want to make sure that we're getting paid what we think we're worth, or what we're value.
Well, we also have school loans. A lot of them have school loans,
and they're a lot bigger than what they used to.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I graduated in 2009 UTA, finished my degree, and 10 years later, it is about 3 times more than what I paid per credit. And it's just mind blowing as an alumni what my friend was telling me it was costing for his daughter. So not me yet. All right. So.
I think, Jeff, just one more comment there. I think that's why it's great. We're doing that internal training process for our own administrators, right?
Yes,
to stay right here in the district. And we're doing that as an initiative for some upward mobility right there.
Yes,
So
several teachers got certified, so we can keep that internal. That was discussed in my advisory committee last week for Delaney. And I think that's amazing. And they're going to do more. And that also keeps people here if we can give them, make sure we pay them what they're valued, because we can certify all these people, like the fire department, right? They certify these people, we invest, we train, and then they go to Mansfield. We don't want that scenario either.
Well, and let me give you one example of that, Jeff. I mean, now I may be wrong here, but I think I'm pretty close to being accurate. If I'm off it a little bit, I'm thinking we pay our assistant principals $1,000 or $1,500 more than what they were making as teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you want to keep an assistant principal, that's probably not enough to be worth them the headaches they're going to go through as an assistant principal. I know your assistant principal, when you were in high school, I bet had all kinds of headaches that you caused him or her. And the idea that you're going to get $1,000, $1,500 difference there, that's where we get into this issue of, are we paying, are we paying enough to keep our good people here?
Yeah, I think that's important. All right, let's go on to, let's see. This will be to Mike. What do you see as two of the top priorities for the district, and how would you address them? And I think this is a natural kind of progression. So I'm just going to go ahead and include the next one, which is, where do you see Kennedale in the next 10 years? I think that's a natural conversation with that.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me address this first one with Maria here. That was her question first.
Mhm.
I mean, if I'm looking at really, I think one priority we have to mention is academic achievement, how the kids are doing. I mean, that's a primary goal in our schools. We want a lot of other things to help socialize them, to help them learn other things, working with teams, treating people fairly and all. But I mean, the primary thing that we got to do is we've got to teach them how to read, how to write, how to do the academics. And as has been, we've had people bantering around for some time. Our reading and math scores are not great. We've got some struggles there. Now, they're not a whole lot different than struggles in other districts, but it's not anything to stand up and pat ourselves on the back on. And I think one thing we all know is to excel in either a trade school or in college or whatever, you do need to know how to read and how to do basic mathematics.
Mhm.
I think we're making some progress on some things. I mean, our Student Success Center that the superintendent started is one of those areas that allows people back into, to get their degree and to graduate. I'm hearing a lot of good things about that. I think we're doing a better job of diagnosing and intervening on kids that have dyslexia and, can be a reading issue. I know my two little granddaughters both kind of struggle with that, and they've really had some good assessment and some good training there to
Completely
help
agree.
them with that. Prior to COVID, our accountability ratings were improving. On all but one campus had a B, and that one that didn't have a B had a C. And I know they've done some rearranging of they've got excellent principal over that now, and I'm confident that rating will be going up. I think extending and going to full day pre-K is also going to help some of those students who maybe need some additional help and don't get it at home. I think the one thing I would kind of say here is that it's important that we realize it's not our duty as board members to come up with educational strategies.
Sure.
I've taught in the university graduate school. I have a doctorate, as does Maria, but we're not primary or secondary educators. Our job is to task the superintendent to work with his team and come up with a strategy that accomplishes the goals that we need accomplished, and then evaluate him on how well he's doing that. So I think we're doing some good things in academia, but we need to, we certainly have room to improve. I guess the next one I'm going to get on, and this is one that I hope I don't go overboard on, but it's a passionate issue with me, and that is, and it is something I feel like as board members we can do, is we need to have some better board behavior. The board is responsible for how it handles itself and for, what it does. As a former board president, I can get kind of worked up about this. So if I do, I apologize ahead of time. But I think it's difficult, if not impossible, for a district to reach its potential if you have a board that's not healthy or it tends to be a little dysfunctional.
Of course.
Now, most of what I'm going to be expressing is kind of not, we got a new board that was just seated in November. That's a new board. I want to say too, I think we've had good people on our board, but good people do not always equate to good board members. I think our board needs to do a better job of overseeing our superintendent. 2 years ago, we hired a young superintendent, had 2 years of experience. I think he could have really benefited of having good board oversight. Unfortunately, I think the board has kind of responded by maybe at times coming across more like a cheerleader instead of giving him good oversight and feedback. I think one kind of example of this just came up with the contract extension for 4 years. That was something unprecedented in KISD history. That's, to my knowledge, never happened before. And that implies you cannot trust the prospective board members that will be elected by the public to adequately evaluate the superintendent. And it also implies the superintendent's job performance won't be strong enough for the new board to vote an extension next year, as is typically done. I think the board has also had a problem sometimes with following its own procedural rules and the law. The board president should preside over meetings and run the meetings according to its rules, according to the law that we have. We've had times where things have come up in board meetings that and a decision's been made that go against, really what the law is or what board policy is. Board closed board meetings have a particular structure they need to be handled on, and I don't think those have been followed. I think, unfortunately, too many times that's been an avenue for board members to be bullied in those closed sessions, and for other members to kind of rail against the public when they, during those closed sessions. That is not legal and not way a closed session. The board needs to follow the rules and the law. I think, again, if you want a healthy board, you're going to have a board that's not divided. And when you're kind of doing things like our board's done, it's kind of no wonder that we have a divided board. And this is not good for the board. It's not good for the public, and it's not good for the superintendent either. And again, I can get kind of passionate on there, and I'll stop right there. But I do feel like that's something that, should Maria get on the board, should I get on the board, we do have a say in how our board operates.
Absolutely. All right, Maria. Again, double questions. So the two top priorities, and then next 10 years.
Okay. So my top priorities that I picked, it was hard after I even asked my own question to stick to two, right? Because I think we've talked about three: the achievement gaps, teachers being the backbone, which is recruitment and retention, and then our growth issues. But I will kind of address the achievement gaps, kind of like what Mike just kind of did there. If we are going to be an exemplary school and kind of a destination school, what does that look like? He talked about, sort of that school report card that we get, and we do have, the 4 Bs and the 1 C rating. So obviously, if you just measure it from that TEA assessment, what we need to strive for is, all A ratings for all of our schools, right? There's no reason that we can't have A ratings across the board, right? So how do we get there? Obviously, the pre-K, the full-time, full-day pre-K is one way that we get there. That early childhood facility that really can set up kids for success,
Please.
that we've talked about, right? Elementary school STEM labs, I think, are something that we could really kind of look at. Well, we're really emphasizing really at the elementary level already, those STEM labs. And again, those are, research has shown lots of districts are doing those with great success. Mm-hmm. Increasing, like Mike said, we've got to increase our performance levels on reading and math. And while those scores have gone up in the years, they're certainly still not where we want them to be. And while those were kind of going up, our writing scores were unfortunately kind of creeping down. So all three of those need to be things that we put measures into place. And I agree, we look to the experts to how they're going to do that, but we certainly target that those are areas that need to be looked at. Continuing to expand our career technology programs, right, at the high school. We've got 11 programs of study right now. And I know there's a couple more that are coming on. Next year, they're looking to add automotive technology. Last year, we added culinary arts. We've added welding. So there's a lot of great things going there. And I think we just need to keep going in that direction, because there's actually 16 career clusters that TEA supports. And so we've got 11 programs of study right now. So there's areas that we can continue there, right? Because again, if we're looking at it again through that equity lens and setting all students up for success, some of that is going to be college readiness, and some of it is going to be career training.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an excellent way that we're kind of leveling the playing field and making sure everybody has an opportunity for success. You know, we're already expanding, and I think we need to continue to expand that on-ramps courses, right, which allow for dual enrollment courses, right? So we're doing that with a partnership through University of Texas at Austin. We need to continue to expand that on-ramps program, continue with more advanced placement courses. So we definitely need to do that. So I think if we are maintaining, obviously we've got great things going on with our sports and our fine arts. We need to continue to make sure that they've got the sports equipment that they need, the infrastructure needs to be maintained, things that we can continue to excel there, continue to excel with our UIL and academics who just brought home awards, right? So if we look at doing all those things, and again, look and maybe incorporating that the process where we look at things from the equity lens, we can really close a lot of those achievement gaps and then really continue to excel and move the district forward to an old school term of like being an exemplary school, right? A school of choice. So that's sort of where my top three, if you will, that I think we've addressed. But since Mike brought up the board experience, I want to just make a comment on that. I think clearly, you know, operating, functioning well as a board, right, is very important. That has to be very collegial, very respectful, very professional. There certainly are, rules of order and how we go about doing processes, and we certainly need to be mindful of those and do those. And I think I would certainly be a participant who could absolutely do that and bring that to the board. Now, that doesn't always mean that everybody's going to be one voice, because everybody does need to bring their perspectives, and we do need to kind of discuss the issues and tease them out. And that doesn't mean sort of, rubber stamping everything or being united on everything, but certainly you make the decisions, you have the discussions, you ask the right questions, you do your vote. Once the vote is done and a decision is made, you move forward. Right? You move forward very professionally, very collegially, and you move on to the next issue that has to be tackled for the greater good of all. So I agree, we can control the culture of the board, we can control the professionalism, the respect of the board, and I value all that and would absolutely be committed to making sure that happens from my part. Yes.
And I appreciate you guys answering both those questions. I just think they're naturally kind of put together, and my 2 cents about it too, as well, is I think the district could do a little bit better with those early programs. I believe, Mike, you talked about autism, and you were talking about pre-K, and that kind of early recognition. But we didn't know, like Alexis she just needed some speech therapy, and our doctor's like, go talk to your school district. Like, what would they do? She's not a student yet, and we didn't realize that they have these programs to do early identification and help out with a little speech therapy, or identify things that are a little bit more serious, for example autism and things like that, and just kind of get them in that early programs and to prep them better, so that way when you do go to elementary, they're introduced, they're on a little bit more equal footing with everybody. I didn't know that. I didn't know that we can go to our district for pre-prep, and in pre-K is one of those things, that everybody knows, unless you pay for it, or you're eligible, you're not going to get in pre-K. You might as well go do a daycare. So I just think the district should, there were wonderful programs, and I just think we should maybe let people know. I didn't know. I just didn't know. And then go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead, please.
I think you're right. I think we need to do a better job of communicating, because most people don't know that. And then there's another piece to that too. A lot of these special ed type programs or special services, it would be good if we could work up a program where we could have an advocate or an ombudsman. In the legal sense, we call it an ombudsman, someone there that could intervene, because a lot of our parents do not understand some of that stuff, especially when you're talking about English as a second language, or our parents that maybe culturally there's some differences there. And those kids, it's real easy for them to get left out of these special services because they don't have a parent who maybe can be an advocate for them. And we've noticed that with my grandkids. My daughter's been kind of tenacious about making sure they get what they want. But what happens if you don't have a mama or a daddy that has that knowledge and that time to be able to do that? So there's probably an understanding, like you've said, of understanding what's available. And then another step beyond that is, okay, do we have people that are going to advocate for these kids to make sure they get in the right places where they can get the help they need?
Absolutely.
I think another advantage is going to be when we get our full-time pre-K, really up to gear, is you're going to capture those kids at pre-K, right? And so you're going to stay with your school district. You really are going to feel then a connection from pre-K. Like you said, Jeff, you're not going to have to look for a pre-K elsewhere and then transfer your kids in kindergarten. We're going to get them at pre-K. So we're going to be able to have them build those bonds and that relationship with Kennedale ISD, which will keep them then hopefully through their 12 years, through 12th grade. And so there's also more funding coming along for ESL teachers and dyslexia in House Bill 3. So you're right. We need to really do a lot of that preventative and set those kids up for success in those early childhood area time frame, which is why the House bill is even earmarking more monies for that. So the school districts can really capitalize.
I didn't realize how important that pre-K age and right before really are until I had kids, really. And then so I noticed as a stay-at-home dad, I had to go get a daycare just part-time just so they can learn how to be in school. It's important for kids in that early stage to, they get the crackers, but they sit down and it's quiet and get the crackers and they all quiet color and they're learning how to interact in a school environment. And it's really important. And again, to identify in an ISD point of view, is to identify, those students that might need a little help or just a different way to take a test or whatever, because that's also important. My sister didn't get diagnosed with dyslexia until she was in high school. Once they realized that and gave her that a little bit more time, she got a master's degree in diet stuff, and she lives in Oregon. She's doing great. So it's important to identify some of those things early.
Right. And Jeff, that kind of goes back to what I was saying again with that equity lens, because again, we're talking about that equity lens. We're talking about all learners. And so that means kids that are advanced. That means kids that have special learning needs or unique learning needs. We're looking at how we can level the playing field and capture their needs and set them up for success. So that, again, that captures that whole group as well.
And to the latter half, the 10 years thing, and I kind of gave you an early question, guys, about what's district going to look like post COVID for the next decade. And for me, it's from a technology. If you didn't know, Maria, I own an IT company, so I'm kind of a nerd like that. And I've always said I would never do cyborg technology. That's not my generation necessarily, but I wouldn't fault the next generation for doing that. And the mentality is that it's kind of their time, not my time anymore. And with us, with COVID last year, and what all school districts did and the state did, which is, you had to go wireless, you had to go online, quickly built infrastructure, got all the students' laptops and things like that. So for me, am I?
Now, what's that, right?
There we go.
That's right. Can we go ahead and get him out of here and then we'll finish this up?
Okay.
Okay. Did you hear all that, Jeff? We lost you.
We lost me. AT&T.
Yeah, we were talking about the irony of Mike and I still being here, but the tech guy is the one that we lost and got frozen.
You have no idea. I only have AT&T as an option, only in our area. We fixed it. We're working. Spectrum's coming. So I'll start over that. From an IT position, we built the infrastructure for online. Everybody did. The government literally just threw money out there for everybody to do this quickly. And so for the next 10 years, it's kind of, I can see this new evolution of how school might be approached. And I'm not necessarily saying we're all going online, because we know that students at home is just not effective for everybody. And not all students have internet, but the fact that all students now in the district have laptops and everything, all tests can be online. The statewide test is going to be done online this year for the first time in history as well. And so these kind of processes forward, it's going to be a different and virtual environment. Did we lose Mike a little bit?
I think we just learned why we're not ready to go to completely virtual yet.
Let me try pushing this back. Probably my kids.
You're still cutting in and out.
Killing my bandwidth.
Probably. That's probably exactly it.
I might have Eddie cut that one. To go back to what I was saying, the infrastructure is there. And I could just kind of see, again, this utilization of virtual environments forever, where we can be in school and the students can sit next to each other, but still be virtual in connectivity. And for example, next week I go speak on web design for a high school class in California, I believe it is, virtually online through Nepris. So that kind of get the experts in. You're talking about bringing in automotive. Well, what if we can have one of the engineers from Toyota zoom into our classrooms? And so I can kind of see in the next 10 years, and I'm the generation that tested distant learning, right? I took Latin in junior high and they were teaching it at Arlington High. And we did it through a TV and remote learning. So I just kind of see there's like the line in the sand has been drawn. And the next decade, I can kind of see that the education will finally be IT controlled.
Mhm.
That's my 2 cents on it. All right.